Yeah. The victory horns. Oh my goodness. We never, ever do this, ladies and gentlemen, but the victory horns are sounding not for the UFC. They are sounding for the PFL. Specifically, they're sounding for Usman Nurmagomedov, who just, I don't know, like 20 minutes ago, maybe, continued his undefeated streak, eking out a majority decision win over Paul Hughes in the main event of PFL Road to Dubai Champions Series. And frankly, we got something to talk about. I am shocked we are here. For those of you who are following along very closely at MMAfighting.com, we love you for that. You may have noticed that this was not a planned post show. When we did our preview show and our BTL this week and been talking about this weekend's events, the overarching theme was BKFC Knucklemania 5 is the dominant force of the weekend, but there's also this one really good fight at PFL. That might have been wrong on our parts, ladies and gentlemen, because I got to tell you, that one fight was amazing. And just in general, this is all nonsense aside, this is the most successful PFL event of my career. That I have been doing this, working in this space. This is by far the thing that had the most people talking, that got the most interest. I don't know if it was Usman Nurmagomedov that did it. I don't know if it was Paul Hughes. I don't know if it was the build to this, the just blatant Ireland versus Dagestan thing like that. But people cared about this event in a very big way. And then the main event delivered in a very big way. And so, yes, as that comment just pointed out, that fight was a friggin' banger, and I wanted to talk about it. So we didn't have a post-show plan. There aren't that many people working. This is all a little bit slapdash, a little bit haphazard, but it was this or I was going to go like live on my Instagram. I was like, this is, let's just do it, because I am certain that there are many of you out there who just saw that fight, want to chat about it. And so we won't go for super long, but right out of the gate, top of the order, Usman Nurmagomedov moves to 19-0-1 now. The one no contest, not 0-1, is a draw. 48-46, 48-46, 47-47 are the scorecards in your main event. And the first thing I want to say about this fight, as you know, you guys all get in and weigh in and the chat starts going, this is the fight of the year. I don't think it's close. Last week, we had a discussion about whether the Yuri versus Jamal Hill fight was a better fight than Umar versus Merab. There is no question. This is the front runner at this moment in time for fight of the year. If there's a world in which this fight doesn't end up being in the top 5, that means 2025 was an incredible year for us. Because as all these comments are pointing out, a battle like that, it deserves a post show. And that is literally what I was like, who's around? Can we do this? Let me come talk to the people and they can speak to me, because that is, Casey, you have yet to see this, and I'm not asking you to pop in, but this is more for your edification. I think to me, this is undeniably the best fight that PFL has ever put on. And frankly, it came in what is surprisingly the biggest moment of their promotion, as far as I'm concerned, because I can't stress this enough. We had no expectations as a website about PFL's doing well. Like, the events are never a big traffic driver for us. People are broadly not that interested in the specifics of PFL. Even the championship card, where there are $7 million on the line in all the championship fights. Even at the height of Kayla Harrison, the level of interest of people like genuinely just wanting to see what was going on here. And in what is the biggest platform they've ever had, Max, all this level of interest, the best fight of the promotion comes through. I have been critical of PFL and said, I don't really think that there are PFL fans. There might start to be some. And if there aren't PFL fans, they're damn sure Paul Hughes fans after this, because that was an outrageous performance from the young Irishman. Also an incredibly great performance from Usman Nurmagomedov. Don't want to bury that. But the lead story here, the big takeaway I think most people will leave, is that Paul Hughes may have lost that fight on the scorecards, and we will get to the scores in just a little bit. He may have officially lost that fight. he won in every way that is not getting the Bellator belt. And considering the Bellator belt is kind of meaningless at this point anyway, that man leaves this event smelling like roses. There was a big to do made in the buildup from, and God knows we saw it over and over. They played that same promo package about 100 times of Usman saying, I don't really know who Paul Hughes is. He beat one dude and gets a title fight. He's not very good. I still haven't even looked into him, and I'm fighting him. There is a somebody who is good at doing video editing and wants to do this thing, has the most obvious option right now of going that clip, and then immediately after it, you can do like, oh, here's Paul Hughes beating his ass for a minute, and then there's the end of the story, the coda to it, which is Usman Nurmagomedov, after he has eked out this majority decision win, heaping effusive praise on Paul Hughes in his post-fight speech. Paraphrasing a little bit, not exact quotes, but I deeply underestimated him. You were totally right, Paul, when you said it was a mistake to underestimate you. He was so strong. He's so good. He made me a better fighter today. I had to raise my game. I think he raised his game. Incredibly effusive in his praise for Paul Hughes at the end of that fight, because Paul Hughes was a freaking madman in there, y'all. Like, the first round was not the most exciting. And we see that in a lot of great fights anyway. 25 minutes allows you to have sort of rounds where both fighters are feeling things out. And I think pretty unanimously, Usman probably won that first round on most scorecards. He was just busier with a lot of kicks, chewing up the lead leg of Paul Hughes. Paul Hughes was just kind of in there. He was waiting for his opportunity. Both men were getting reads. Things really started to kick off in the second round, though, as Usman started to try and wrestle a lot more and was having absolutely no success. I mean, none whatsoever. Shooting takedowns. Hughes was his hips were so quick. He was so scrambly when Usman would even get a hold of something. And he was punishing Usman every time. Like, he was starting to chop away at the legs himself, ripping heaters to the body. They would clinch, and Usman would be looking for the Thai plum and knees, and Paul Hughes would just start firing rockets into the ribs. Like, he was scrapping his ass off. And at the end of that second round, you heard the commentary team sort of notice Usman's looking a little tired there, and that the thought creeps in, hey man, we just saw vaunted undefeated Umar Nurmagomedov, get a little bit tired around this point in time too. Is the same thing about to happen? Credit to Usman. He did not, and maybe it's just that he's not fighting Merab, who has unbelievable cardio, obviously. Third round is when things get wild, though, because we get a point deduction in that round. Usman Nurmagomedov lands repeated low blows. Both men had landed low blows, but Usman lands like two in very quick succession. The last one of which the bout actually stops for a minute. It comes off a takedown. Paul Hughes just sort of spins and runs away. Usman throws a kick, goes low. This one actually hurts Hughes. There's a break in the action, of points deducted. But that point deduction in a fight that is, at that point in time, I had it scored 1-1, and there's a point deduction. That is critical, especially as it looked like Usman was fading. Usman, things get hairy there. I think I thought Usman sort of eked out the third round even after that, but the momentum seems to be shifting to Paul Hughes. And then round 4, it goes even more insane. An unintentional clash of heads as basically Usman ducks in for a takedown. Hughes kind of meets him in the middle, opens a not like a nasty gash or whatever, but opens a cut on Paul Hughes's forehead. And so there's just a river of blood pouring down his face. Usman gets the worst of it, though, because he catches it in the temple. He looks dazed, like legitimately is blinking a lot. The Irish fans at this point are in a fervor. They are chanting. Mike Beltran, the referee, has stopped the action. And Paul Hughes becomes a made man in this moment. There are times in this sport when somebody gets over, when people who had no idea about a dude can just be like, that is the moment. I am thinking specifically Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald 2. The iconic stare down at the completion of the round where Robbie's face is busted open and he just meets Rory and was like, okay. Like, there are moments when somebody just elevates in the fandom. This was one of those. Paul Hughes, blood pouring down his face in his corner. The Irish fans are chanting. You can hear his coach screaming, he doesn't want to be here. He does not want this anymore. And Paul Hughes looks like a wolf with a lamb to slaughter in front of him while Usman is there. He is blinking a bunch, trying to get his wits about him. Ultimately, fight does restart. It gets a little hazy there for a minute. Like maybe this will just end up being a tough way out, because if the fight ends at that moment, if Usman says, man, I can't continue, it ends up being a no contest. I think I'm not sure at what time period, so maybe it would have gone on the scorecards. I think it ends up just being a no contest, but everyone is leaving saying Usman quit. Paul Hughes is the dude. Instead, Usman does answer the bell. They fight. He immediately gets a takedown. Round ends. And then the fifth round, Usman comes out with a new fervor, gets an early takedown, lands a bunch of knees. Paul Hughes just battles his ass right back. Paul Hughes was so friggin' scrappy in there, y'all. Like, whenever Usman would get takedowns, it would not matter. Hughes was constantly working, constantly punishing him, hitting him as much as he could, and just turning it into a dogfight. And the last 10 seconds, there is a grappling exchange. Paul Hughes hits a switch, and then these two dudes just swing until the final bell. Legitimately, this is the best PFL fight that has ever happened. It came in the biggest moment. And Paul Hughes did not win, but there are a whole host of new people who are pumped about Paul Hughes. Because I was thinking, honestly, I was thinking to our preview show when I said these odds are a little long. I think Paul Hughes is a live dog, and AK was like, maybe, but like, I don't know. Why are you so invested in this fight of Paul Hughes? You know, he's got the great win over AJ McKee. And I said, man, that win over AJ McKee told me so much. This loss against Usman told me so much about who Paul Hughes is, what the business he is about. And I think a ton of other people have kind of just got clued into this. Paul Hughes is a friggin' star, and this was an incredible coup for PFL. For them to get him, for how this all unfolded. And if they don't immediately run back a rematch, it would be insane. Let's go to the scorecards before we open up to some peep conversation for a little bit here and just say officially, I live blogged this. The official MMA fighting scorecard for this bout is 47-47 draw. I scored rounds 1, 3, and 5 for Nurmagomedov, with round 3 also including the point deduction. I scored rounds 2 and 4 for Hughes. If you want to swap any of those rounds scores, I don't have an issue with it, basically. The only round I feel really confident in is that Usman absolutely won the first round. I don't think that was particularly competitive. Not that it wasn't competitive, not that he dominated, but Paul Hughes just did very, very little in the first round, whereas Usman was constantly working, chipping away with low kicks. Anything else, any other score you want to throw out there, I am fine with. It is a little, this is not a robbery in my estimation, though I would love to have AK Lee kind of review this fight. I know he's not watching live. Probably will end up doing a robbery review because I think it warrants it, and get his take on it. I think it's not a robbery because the rounds are so close. There's like a little bit of a bad taste in your mouth, certainly, in part because when fights like this happen, when somebody overachieves, when the underdog has such a terrific performance, and certainly is winning the optics of that fight, whether he won the fight or not. Much like, frankly, Alexander Volkanovski finished round 5 in such a way that people wanted him to win. There's some of that going on here. I think considering that, it leaves a little bit bad taste in your mouth to think that Usman won 4 rounds on 2 judges' scorecards, because that is a little harsh, but I think it's explicable. And mostly the only thing that really matters to me is that they run this back. PFL, I've been critical about them many times. This is the most no-brainer, obvious, immediate rematch. Paul Hughes afterwards called for a rematch. He didn't call for immediate. He said, I know we're going to see it. I know we're going to see him again. We're going to fight again. And when we do, I want to fight in Belfast. We did this in Dubai. Let's do it in Belfast. I got to tell you, Don Davis should be on the phone right now. This is the most obvious thing in the world to set up and do. This was a sensational outcome for both men, fight for the PFL, and doing a rematch in Belfast would be gangbusters, especially considering how big of an event this was for them. So I certainly hope they kind of strike while the iron is hot with regard to that. Honestly, other than that, there's not too much more for me to sort of say at you. I will do a brief rundown just for posterity's sake, though. Frankly, nobody cares that much about the rest of the results. But Vadim Nemkov runs right over Tim Johnson in the co-main event, first round submission. Johnson, credit to him, showed up, tried to be game, had nothing for Vadim Nemkov. I hope we get to see Vadim Nemkov in meaningful fights, or frankly, I hope he just leaves the UFC or leaves to go to the UFC where there are many meaningful fights for him. Ahmed Magomedov beats Nathan Kelly with a choke. Kelly had a strong opening round. Ahmed came out and sort of did the thing after that. Ibrahim Ibrahimov is a dude I knew almost nothing about, and I'm now certainly a little bit more interested after his win over Kenny Moka Onowana. I'm sure I butchered that. I'm sorry, Kenny. But undefeated dude, seems like all class, two great post-fight speech. A little more interested in him. Renat Kavalov beats Cleaver Fernandez. Ahmed Sami beats Tarek Suleiman. Mirafzal Akhtamov beats Mike Thompson with an arm triangle choke. That was a pretty nice little finish. Also kind of interested in him. He's a little older, but looked really good, and the guy I didn't really know much about before them. Hadi Omar Al-Husani beats Raul Panales. That is another Team Habib dude. Seems okay. Nothing that Stone impressed me. John Mitchell picked up a UD over Suhail Tyree. And then the other thing that is probably the most notable outside of the main event is just because it was wicked is Hyder Khan broke Mustafa Nada's arm with a front kick, Nada down blocked, and his arm just flopped like cooked spaghetti. And then he turns away and doesn't like cry in pain, just goes, oh, and like puts it back in. And everybody recognized what happened and the bout's over. You can check the highlight. There's a highlight on MMAfighting.com. But that is all the big things that happened in PFL. But mostly the story is Usman Nurmagomedov, Paul Hughes, and everything about that. So because this is an impromptu post show and there's not somebody for me to really banter about, the banter comes with y'all. I'm going to open the floor. If you guys have any comments, questions, things you want to hop in here, we'll chat for just a little bit and then we'll get out of here because there is a BKFC Knucklemania starting in a few hours. You can go grab some dinner, do whatever, but this was such an incredible fight. And honestly, this is the sort of fight that maybe gets PFL traction. So it felt necessary to hop on and do a reaction show because that fight was so incredible. So Casey, any big questions, comments, etc. in the chat? We can go for a little bit and then get the hell out of here.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I got some questions for you. Here we go. Am I on? Yeah, here we go. Sorry, just came back from training. I'm all still kind of a little riled up. Then I came back and oh my god, I gotta go see this fight now. So I'm excited.
It legitimately, like, this is, as this fight was unfolding, I was like, I mean, I stand of the belief that no one will ever be a co-leader to the UFC, right? That's a ridiculous assumption. I was like, this sort of is like the fight where this is their hope to be a Bonner Griffin. Like, oh, this fight is so good and so many people are tuning in for this. So many people are interested in this. This is how you can start to build momentum. They got to capitalize, but this was an undeniably good weekend for
And
PFL.
they look like they look like now. I mean, I saw some of the prelims and they looked like they had a really lively, real crowd.
Crowd was great. This was the first major event that took place in Dubai. They should go back all the time. Crowd was super into it, super lively. And I thought this as the show was happening. Production was better. The pacing was much better than PFL events usually. They've been getting better about that, but that was critical. I would quibble with the fact that the show was like almost the Habib PFL show. They said his name so many times, like, this fighter is trained by Habib. Like, that was literally a thing that would be said during the announcements, where it'd be like, this guy is the former UFC heavyweight champion. It'd be like, this guy one time had a cup of coffee with Habib Nurmagomedov. It was a bit ridiculous, but I don't know if that's what got it over, but whatever, because the rest of it was great. The production was solid. Dan Hardy's not to everybody's taste. I thought he did a fine job. They did a really good job of making this feel important, of bringing PFL fighters of note and who matter in, and not like flooding it with it, but okay, here, Brendan Loughnane will get in the booth for a fight and a half, and we'll have Dakota Ditchabo around, and just here are the stars of PFL congregating around this event because this is a big fight and it's important. I thought all of it worked really, really well, and I'd have never given PFL an A this is an A for them. Like undeniably, this
Ooh,
was a as good as could be for them.
that's high praise. That's high praise. All right, some
Don
super
Davis,
chats.
clip this. You can use this. You did well. Keep doing this.
Don Davis, what's your favorite fight? Now you have one. You
This
got
is
one,
your
Don.
favorite
You
fight,
got
Don
it, Don.
Davis.
You got it.
This is your favorite fight. That's the answer.
All right, super chat coming in. Here we go.
Oh, super chat. Enigma Crunch. Was the point deduction BS or valid? I have long been on the corner of all point deduction should happen all the time. And I will basically never have an issue. If a point deduction is granted, I will never say it is wrong just because like they should happen more often. In the world in which point you are just allowed to foul freely, it probably was a bad point deduction because like everybody just gets to do it all the time. And this one, insofar as an explicable low kick, was really explicable. It came as Paul Hughes was literally spinning out of a takedown, and Usman threw a kick at what should have been his retreating legs, but he's spinning, and so it hits him low. But no, it's totally valid because he that was the third low blow from Usman and the second in quick succession.
Mm.
Uh, Ultimately, it didn't matter in the fight, particularly with two judges giving 4 rounds to it. But a number of people would have been pretty upset if the bout hinged on that, right? Like if that ends up being scored a majority draw, people probably wouldn't have been that upset because I think the overarching feeling is that, well, Paul Hughes should have won. But if somehow that ended up playing a role negatively, people would have been pretty upset. But not me. Thought it was totally valid.
All right, thank you much.
But
Super
thank
chat
you,
from
Anibal Crunch. Tanvir Hussein, will this do for Usman what the Poirier fight did for Islam as far as leveling up? So he says that in his post-fight speech. He incredibly complimentary. Like the first thing he said after shout out Dubai, thanks for being here, was Paul Hughes is awesome. He is so good. That was such a hard fight. He said that that's the most hurt he has ever been in a fight. And he almost specifically said, I think I leveled up in this fight as he made me level up. He made me be better. And I think I made him be better too. I would say yes. I think that this is absolutely a learning experience for Usman. It's one of those good ones where maybe he doesn't deserve to win. Again, I don't think it was a robbery, but it is one of those where he can leave this fight and say, all right, I was super arrogant coming into this fight, as he acknowledged in his post fight. I just thought this guy had nothing for me. And I need to keep improving. I need to keep working because people are maybe figuring out my game, specifically our game, a little bit more ways to combat it. And I need to have more tools in the toolbox because like I'm still 26. More people are going to get better and better and better. I'm not near the end of my career. I got to keep adding. So I think that this will. I think he knows it and acknowledged it. And frankly, I think the same for Paul Hughes. Like you heard Paul Hughes in his post-fight speech said, man, I really thought I won that fight. He did post-fight speech as well. Take a note, Umar. I thought I won that fight, but you know what? I could have done more. I had more to give. I regret leaving as much in the tank as I did. Next time we meet again, I will make sure to leave it all out there. This is one of those. There are no losers in this fight. Somebody technically won, nobody lost, and both dudes are young. They're both sub 30. They will both be so much better as a result of this. This has the makings of a really, really good rivalry.
awesome.
Thank you,
Follow up from Tanvir. Tanvir.
Tanvir. Habib was very classy in his post-fight speech. It's about uniting. This is what separates him and Connor. So, Casey, you will not have seen this, obviously. In his post-fight speech, because there had been so much tension boiling between the Irish and Dagestani fans, that is what this was billed as, Ireland versus Dagestan. Frankly, from both sides, and then certain comments from Habib Usman about Ireland's not a great fight nation in regards to producing top MMA talent. Things had started to boil up. We saw a brawl occur at the ceremonial weigh-ins yesterday from fans. There was definitely sort of a feeling that could happen again in the arena, though ultimately it didn't. but during the post-fight speech, Khabib gets on the mic after Usman says his first little salvo and is like, hey, I just want to remind everybody, Ireland, mainly, I think, obviously speaking to his supporters, the Team Eagle supporters and the fans of, hey, just remember, we respect Ireland. Ireland are the biggest supporters of Palestine. There's nothing but love here. Way to go, Ireland. And everybody, it was really a love fest from all parties in the post fight. There was and that's kind of what you get after a fight of that level where you're competing that hard against each other. There is no animosity either way. But Habib immediately killed any idea that there would be a riot in the stands from the Irish fans or whatever. So it was like, oh, we're all friends here. And yes, it was very classy. He also absolutely played a role in things getting a little bit tense in the buildup, but it is what it is. It's a fight game. They're not going to be batting 1,000 when it comes to being great in these instances, but that was a really nice moment. And it was a really charming post-fight thing for everybody to just be like, man, that fight was hard and great, and we're all wonderful. I respect all of you.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to actually watching the whole fight, the walkouts, the post-fight speech, everything. Sounds like a really grand slam for PFL.
Walkouts were great too, Casey. Okay. They're not quite like peak of what could be, but
felt good. Felt big.
PFL does them better anyway. They let them marinate for a little bit longer. They give you multiple layers to it. It was there. I felt tension heading into that fight, and then the fight delivered unbelievably. So you're going to enjoy the hell out of it.
Cool. And I appreciate what you said about Habib and just all the fighters and their post-fight speeches. Because I think I think we're a little to blame. I think we're a little too overly critical sometimes on what word for word what these guys are saying after just going through hell, to win. And we're like, now what are they gonna say? I think we've got to give them more a little bit of leeway and stuff. So, but I'm glad everyone just kind of said the right things and everyone kind of, I don't know. It's just it's a good feeling when you see fights like that and then everything kind of ends properly.
It was awesome. It was legitimately awesome because truly the first words out of Usman's mouth were, thank you, Dubai. This is so great. And the second one was, Paul Hughes is really, really good. Almost verbatim, as we said. That guy's really good. I definitely underestimate him. He looks right in Paul Hughes' eyes like, you were right. When you said it was a mistake to underestimate you, you were correct. It was... I have never seen that level of frank assessment of a man who pretty clearly in real time recognized this fight is way more difficult than I thought. Things are going poorly in here. That dude has earned my respect. And it was pretty sick, man.
That's super interesting because I know in our pre-fight preview show we were kind of talking about that a lot. Is Usman really is this a mistake? Because he was publicly saying, I don't know why I'm fighting this fight, but I'll fight it. But so it's kind of fun that whole story kind of came full circle too.
I'm telling you, there's a legitimate after you watch it, maybe you will feel compelled. You could do a 60-second edit for social that is Usman saying, this dude doesn't deserve to be here. Then a brief clip of getting punched in the face, and then the image of Paul Hughes with blood streaking down his face, looking like he is a lion ready to pounce on him. And then a third clip of Usman be like, that dude's really good. I fucked up. It was such a clear ABC story, beginning, middle, end.
The rematch, we'll see what happens, but man, after the build up for this fight and then 25 minutes of them fighting each other and then how they're going to make adjustments, man. And this is going
to be great.
This is PFL's chance. It's as a promoter, Don Davis, because now you have the fight, you have the story. Now you just need to lay it out for it. You just do it right. Everything. This is their big opportunity to have that, because this one snuck up on us. The rematch shouldn't.
Out of nowhere, dude. Yeah. Out of nowhere.
Yeah, the rematch shouldn't. Now they're
100%. Dude, Paul Hughes had it right. Paul Hughes had it right when he said he wanted to fight Usman in Dubai. That was correct. You run this back in Belfast. I don't even know what else you would consider doing given like where their talent pool is right now. And you make it a big deal. You give this a full court media press. Do a media world tour on this one, like that, because it will be awesome. These are Paul Hughes dropped none in my estimation. I have Usman in the top 7, I think, at lightweight right now in my rankings. Paul Hughes, he's in my top 15. He might be 12 or something like that. These are 2 of the 10 best lightweights on earth, very likely at this point in time, who are very evenly matched and have a compelling story to tell. Give this all of the promotional weight you can, Don Davis. I am begging you to not screw this up.
Yeah. Let me get this last super chat before I want to ask you a question after that.
Steven, boys, Jed, haven't seen you this fired up since DDP winning the title. Is Javier correct in his assessment of Usman? Hey, Casey, do you train with Angie Hill? Last one. I was in my head. I was reading that as lad shave. It's lads have a lovely day, Parker Porter. Lad shave makes a lot less sense than lads have.
I read Lad Shave too.
Yeah, I was like, what does this mean? Oh, got it. I'm an idiot. Got it. Casey, do you train with Angie Hill?
She was here last week and we grappled just a bit, but she has a fight coming up in a couple weeks, and I didn't want to
Didn't want to hurt her.
Squish her or anything.
That's right. You didn't want to hurt her. You're Mr. 3024 himself.
Yeah.
Can't be doing that.
But I did move around for the new purple belt, Angie Hill. So she was trying to sneaky. She was like trying to get in there. I was like, no. But yes, I did train just a bit, but hopefully train some more later on. Oh, but for you, did this give DDP winning the title feels for you?
So, yeah, they're very different. DDP winning the title gave me feels because I am an unapologetic DDP stan. I am one of the earliest adopters of Dricus du Plessis, the fighter. And so seeing him like actually do the thing was electric and was incredibly fun for me in a way that like personal fandom is. I am not a fan of either Usman or Paul Hughes, though I'm getting to be a Paul Hughes guy after this one. But Paul Hughes impressed me so much in the AJ McKee fight, because I thought that fight would be easy game for AJ McKee. And I know it was a split decision. I thought Paul Hughes cleanly won that fight, in my opinion. And that really like put me on notice. Okay, this is dude who is talented, good, and worth your time. And so this is just me fired up because this is the best fight of the year. Like, this is the best fight of the year by a lot, in my estimation. Because as we had the argument about Yuri Hill versus Merab Umar, and my contention was Merab Umar was very high level. It wasn't that interesting, honestly. Like, that fight did not have ebbs and flows. It was Umar early, and then Merab took over and the fight was over. Whereas Yuri and Hill had ebbs and flows, it had excitement, it had multiple knockdowns. There was a narrative flow going on there. And so it was just a much more interesting fight. This was super high level with the narrative flow as well. This was the best of both worlds of here's this underdog doing this thing, big underdog, overperforming. Usman's in trouble, has to battle back. There's the drama of the low kick, the point deduction, the headbutt, the iconic moment now of Paul Hughes covered in his own blood and just staring daggers at the wobbly, blinking Usman. Like, it was, I think this would be a fight of the year winner in other years, right? Already. Like, so I'm fired up because it was awesome to watch this. And it was 4 p.m. or I was like, I'm at peak mental faculty watching this fight. It was sick.
Sick. Okay. A couple more super chats.
Bobby Atkins, even Don Davis watched that one. Wow. Yes, Don. If you weren't watching, go watch it. This is your answer. Forevermore. What's your favorite fight? This one. It is so easy to do. I hope you're watching. I don't know if he was. I can't imagine he's doing anything else, but regardless, somebody will tell you to watch this fight, and then they will show you the post-fight, and you'll be like, Paul Hughes is a very smart young man. Let me call Belfast and see what venues we can have an event in for late summer when we do our next big show.
All right.
Thank you, Bobby. Spencer, Strikeforce was my favorite number 2 to the UFC. Real momentum with the heavyweight tourney and stars with Diaz, DC, etc. You agree this was the best number 2 to UFC since Pride? Can PFL ever get to that level? What was your favorite Strikeforce event? I don't think it's well. If it depends if we're counting WEC as a number 2 because it was owned by Zuffa for like a lot of the big portions of it, though not under the umbrella. Strikeforce was the spiritual successor to Pride in many ways of being the alternative to UFC, and I think undeniably was the best. Arguably, Strikeforce better than Pride, like the back end of Pride. At the peak, Pride was actually superior to UFC, so it's not really a contest. But the latter end of Pride is sort of starting to fall off, and you can see the end is coming. Versus the peak of Strikeforce, when Strikeforce had women's divisions, which the UFC didn't have at the time, so there was like a clear hook in that regard. Chris Cyborg was doing things. Luke Rockhold was there. Jacare, Tim Kennedy. Like there's that whole group of middleweights that was really good.
Yeah.
Gilbert Melendez, Josh Thompson had those sick fights. Like
sick, yeah.
The peak of Strikeforce with the heavyweight GP. The heavyweight GP was sort of like the final good period right before they started to tailor off. Like the peak of Strikeforce was great. I don't know Strikeforce event numbers as well, so I'd have to look up.
I have my
favorite Strikeforce event.
My favorite Strikeforce
event. The Nick Diaz brawl or the Diaz brawl one is the funniest Strikeforce event.
Was Henderson Babalu on December 4th, 2010. It was one of the most violent cards. Dan Henderson murdered Hanato Babalu. Paul Daly murdered Scott Smith in one of the nastiest
that fight was sick.
Robbie Lawler murdered Matt Lennon. Antonio Bigfoot Silva murdered Mike Kyle.
I pulled this up.
Ovin St. Preux murdered Benji Raddick, the late Benji Raddick. And the entire main card and a couple of the top prelims were just incredibly violent. So that would be my favorite Strikeforce event. I went to many Strikeforce events.
That's a really good one.
But single greatest fight, that would be Paul Daly versus Nick Diaz.
I'd say Daly Diaz is probably just the right answer there, right? I'm trying to think of other ones.
I don't remember who else was on the card. That was the first card that was
Gilbert Melendez Kawajiri was that card, pretty sure.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Where Gilbert just beat the shit out of Kawajiri.
Yeah,
let me pull this up. Yes, that was Gegard Mousasi and Keith Jardine fought to a majority draw. And Shinya Aoki neck cranked Lyle Beerbaum.
Lyle Beerbaum.
So rest of the card left a little bit, but the top 2 was good. Trying to think what the other ones that like really jump out to me from Strikeforce was like, the other obviously huge one is Fedor losing. Fedor getting tapped by Verdum in San Jose, because that was most stunning thing that had ever happened in the sport at that point in time to me.
Like, easily being in the arena for that one, and I was actually in the crowd taking photos because I kind of wanted a wide shot. And when it happened, I've never felt the most just air got sucked out of an entire arena. Like it was wild.
Pulling this up, that was actually a really good card too. Josh Thompson beat Pat Healy. Those were 2 top 15-ish lightweights. Kung Lee had the spinning back kick KO on Scott Smith for Kung Lee. Cyborg killed Jan Finney, but that's whatever. But the Fedor Verdum thing was the most shocking thing that had happened in my MMA fandom at that point in time, basically. Fedor was the unkillable man. And I remember going into this being like, what's Verdum going to do? Tap him? That can't happen. This man willingly spent 25 minutes in Big Dog's guard and just beat the shit out of him from it. What's Verdum going to do? Tap him? It's like, actually, yes, he will. It's like, oh, well, fuck. So that one definitely stands out because it was such a like, what the hell just happened?
Even how it happened was amazing too, because he drops
Verdum. So weird.
He drops her, and then
he dropped him.
Involuntarily goes into his guard.
And it's the one tap too. He doesn't do like a tap. He just goes, "Oh, I've been caught." tap,
Got me.
and then that's it. And so it was so weird, like just like it was any other day in the training room. Like, oh, he got me, tap. I'm out of here. It's like, what
Yeah.
the? That's the end of an era, dude. What are you
Yeah,
talking
Vader
about?
just sits up like,
It was like, yeah, got me. Okay. I guess I couldn't stay undefeated forever. I thought you could, dude. I really did.
Thank you, Spencer. A couple more super
Thank you,
chats.
Spencer. Shout out to Strike Force. Oh,
Oh,
but actually, because you did ask, no, PFL probably can't get to that level, right? Like the sport is just in a very different place. The UFC has so much control and ownership at this point in time
yeah,
that it's
different.
unlikely. Today is the first day I've ever thought maybe they can get there. Like maybe they can get to a place that is like tolerable. And the UFC should want them to get to a place that is good. Competition is better for them, even when it's not real competition. Maybe they can, because Usman Nurmagomedov and Paul Hughes, I mean, they're eventually going to leave, but this can maybe be the start of something. They got to find a way to build momentum and have more than just this to what their thing, but it was a great day for them.
Yeah, and credit to PFL. I don't know if it's just blind luck, the fact that they had this fight on one of the rare weekends UFC is not having a card.
I
So we
assume
have
it
time.
was not blind luck. I
Yeah.
assume that this
Oh,
was intentional.
yeah.
And if that's the case, good on you. That's smart. Every weekend the UFC isn't putting something on, you should be on it. That is no questions asked to me. You should be doing it.
Yeah,
And you should go back to Dubai. That place was live. The arena was pumped. People were interested. Go back to Dubai. Being on Max is great. That is a real thing that people can gravitate to. A pluses. Spencer, for me, was it Diaz versus Cyborg? Diaz flipped off the crowd when he won. And the brawl started, got hit in the head with a thrown beer bottle. It was epic. Yeah. If you weren't around for this gave birth to one of the long-standing and great MMA quotes that is probably not really used that much just because of the way the fan base cycles out. But there were a good 7 years after the infamous Strike Force brawl where you could just say the Gus quote of, sometimes these things happen in MMA. It was like, it wasn't the first time MMA had been on network television, but it was one of the first 5 times it had been on CBS or whatever. And then Diaz, the Diaz brawl starts, and Gus Johnson's response is not like, oh, this is terrible and tragic, and these are professionals. Like, sometimes this just happens in MMA.
Which was the correct thing to say.
It's correct, and it was iconically funny, but especially because this also came in the period where the UFC was doing a level best to be like, they're not just fighters. These are teachers and good people, and they went to college. And Gus was like, yeah, sometimes they're just sociopathic lunatics who throw beer bottles and start brawls. It's incredible. Shout out Gus Johnson. You'll forever
Gus Johnson was actually ahead of the game. He knew.
He was right.
He was
correct. Not arguing the correctness of him.
Yeah, even UFC gave up on that whole thing. They're like, whatever. These guys are idiots. They fight. We pay them money.
Yeah. But for a long time, the forums would just be like, that would be, anytime something would happen, that would be the default answer. Sometimes these things happen in MMA. Oh, John Jones got arrested again. Sometimes these things happen in MMA.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. Wow, for a quick little show, we've gone 44 minutes.
Yeah, we're going to wrap this up in a moment. I honestly, that was when we did. I was like, I don't know if people are going to be interested, but I got energy.
Yeah.
People are interested because things happen. Enigma, watch Karate Combat this morning, PFL this afternoon, BKFC coming in the evening. Pretty awesome Saturday. It is. I watched that Karate Combat card. I will not lie to you. I didn't think it was all that great, but there were some cool things that happened in it. I spent most of last evening watching GFL, which is the worst thing that's ever happened, Casey. And
should we end it on a negative note? Should we end this on a negative
note?
Okay, let's go for it.
Yes, we can. I have a GFL column coming, I think tomorrow, maybe it runs Monday. It was terrible. It was the worst thing I've ever seen, Casey. And I was so upset with it because it only at the very end did it finally get so bad that it was just funny to me. There was no draft. No draft happened. What happened is they clearly broke up the teams into there's 6 teams, and then they lied and said they were having a draft, and this was all a promotional tool to get people interested, which I can't be that upset about in principle because, like, sure, it got people interested. I guess that your gimmick worked, but you lied to me about the draft. That could have been like a really fun and interesting thing to do, and you didn't do it. But the fatal flaw is that they executed it poorly. The production was terrible. They have a good song. I will give them that. It's not as good as the IFL rap, but the GFL rap is like a good song. They had terrible AI artwork animation promo package that ran repeatedly, like just ran all the time, and it which was super weird. And then the draft itself was so obviously like not clear. Immediately was clear that this was not a real draft because Tyron Woodley went first overall. Tyron Woodley's 42 years old and has lost 6 fights in a row. Nobody drafting to win would draft Tyron Woodley with their first overall pick. And then like every subsequent, Sage Northcutt was pick number 2. Like that's clearly Sage Northcutt is not the second best dude in the crop of fighters you have available. Tafik Musayev and Demiris Makulov were both there at his weight class. So all of that was insane. I don't want to be mean to people, so I will try and not say my true thoughts and feelings because it's not necessary to be mean. I would have strongly encouraged them to pick literally any 3 other people for their commentary booth for this than Brendan Schaub, Robin Black, and Mike Goldberg. Literally any 3 other living humans instead of that being the brain trust there. Goldberg was the worst of them all, and just whew, buddy, all he did was talk about the UFC in the good old days. It was so hard.
Did he
and then
mention
like
Randy
they would
Couture?
do interviews. What?
Did he mention Randy Couture?
No, but everyone, but you know, they do interviews and all of it's like former UFC fighters like, oh, my good friend Tyron Woodley, I haven't seen you since the good old days. How you doing, Tyron? And it's like, it was so cringy. And then Robin Black and Brendan Schaub are deeply not to my taste. It was, yes, as Sleeto points out, absolutely nightmare rotation of human beings. Certainly for my taste. If you enjoyed it, good for you. It like that would have been an acceptable group like a decade ago. I have just literally any other people, but certainly just pick new people. Like I don't get any new-ish names, faces, try and get interest. Alex Wendling was trying to do that, but she was left with a really bad bag to hold of being the social media person for like the worst tweets you've ever seen. And then it just goes off the rails, Casey, because it's supposed to be a 20-round draft. They did 4 rounds. That's all they did. They did 4 rounds of draft picks. And then they were just like, here are the teams, except for they spent another hour and a half to announce what the teams are. John Jones did a celebrity pick, but he picked after the draft had already been announced. So like in round 3, I don't even remember who he was saying got picked. Maybe it was Yoel Romero, actually. Yoel Romero going to Miami. But instead they're like, they clearly screwed up the production of it. And so when Owens goes up to here are the next 3 picks, he just doesn't say Miami's pick. He says the picks immediately after that. And then Goldberg goes to the booth. And don't forget, Yoel Romero was drafted by Miami with pick 17. And 5 minutes later, they run a video of John Jones reading out a pick from a car that Yoel Romero went to Miami. Like, what are we doing? Then, like I said, they stopped after round 4 and just announced like the teams. But in the middle of them doing team announcements, which took forever again, they also was like, here's Christian McCaffrey doing a guest announcement. I don't even remember who it was, but it was pick number 68. So the 12th round pick, Christian McCaffrey randomly announces when they didn't do the rest of it. It was so shoddily run. We put together this post show in 3 minutes. That is how long it took us. And there's like more effort went into this than the GFL draft had going into it. And that's not even to mention, if you just look at the teams, look at the people, some of the fighters, Robelis de Spain was announced for Team Miami. literally as he was being announced as a member of Team Miami, he was making his walk to the karate combat pit to fight somebody. Literally as that is happening, you could side by side screen it, and that is going on. Multiple fighters are retired or were retired. Chris Weidman, who retired from the UFC or retired ostensibly from all of competition a week ago or whatever, was drafted and is on
What?
Team New York.
What?
Buddy, it's insane. Uriah Faber was like a top 6 draft pick. Uriah Faber is 45 and hasn't fought in like 7 years or something like that. The average age of fighters is like 36 or something insane. It was so outrageous and not well produced. Like the minimal amount of effort went into this that honestly, my predominant thought as it was going on was, this is all a joke. What they're not actually making a fight league. This is like what they are making is an MMA game that they're going to sell you with these names in the game, like a mobile MMA game, because that's the only thing that would make sense. It was so bad, and like people were interested. People were ready to be interested. Drafts are fun, and then they took away even the fun part. And I cannot imagine a worse launch of a product. I swear to God.
I do feel bad for you because I know you love drafts, and for them to do this to the sanctity of the draft, to what you love, that's just not cool. GFL, not cool. Darren.
It was deeply not cool. And then like you have Brendan Schaub. Brendan Schaub unironically called Kevin Lee a prospect. It was like Kevin Lee and said, so you've got like veterans like Uriah Faber. I was like, he's not even a veteran, he's retired. And you've got prospects like Sage Northcutt and Kevin Lee. Is like, Sage Northcutt's been a professional fighter for over a decade. He's not a prospect. Kevin Lee is not a prospect. What are we doing? It was so ludicrous to happen. And then that's not even to mention that there are numerous fighters who, I forgot, Casey, they also spoiled it. They inadvertently put up a graphic of the draft order like 5 minutes into the show. Somebody immediately screen grabbed it, went all over Twitter, was like, oh, and then people like Ariel Helwani, shout out, was having a fun time playing like fake Woj, be like, I'm seeing that Miami has Junior Dos Santos circled for their first overall draft pick because we knew the order that was coming out. I cannot imagine a worse product launch. I genuinely can't. Like, you could have given me $20 to buy booze and get just hammered and do anything I wanted to, and it would have been better than what they offered. I am so out on GFL as a result of that, and I wanted to be in. I wanted to like them. Can't do it. I have a review of it coming out tomorrow. Go to infighting.com and read. And yes, that's the thing, Drake. Shout out Drake Riggs. That, like I said, that was my honest thought. It was like, the only way that this makes any sense at all is if this isn't real. If this is a video game, this is some sort of a con, but not like a con and that they're going to hold fights and not pay fighters. They're not going to be fights. This is all a marketing ploy for something, and I just don't know what it is. It is the only thing that makes sense, because if that's not the case, Casey, what happened is they thought, I want to make an MMA league, and then they made a rap and were like, I got it. Those are the only things I need for an MMA league. I have a cool song and a name. Good. It's nuts.
The only thing that's missing, they need to just sell some kind of GFL Bitcoin.
Honestly, that might be the grift. Like, maybe that's the grift. Dude, they couldn't even get team names. You have 6 teams, and they were Team Dubai, Team Los Angeles. You couldn't just be like,
I want mascots.
It's the Miami Speedboats and the New York Jets or whatever. Like, it was just so freaking bad. Like, no effort was put into this.
Let's go, Speedboats.
Oh, right. God, I promise you, my services. Look, Don Davis hired me as the Minister of Fun, and the first event PFL holds is the best thing they've ever done. Coincidence? I don't think so. GFL, my phone line is open. I am here to help you. I don't know if I can save you after that, I'll be honest, but we can try. Do you have anything else? Because this went thank God. It's like, I did not intend this to go almost an hour. I was like, Strike while the iron's hot. This is cool. People will be interested. Suddenly, here we are. We're talking about GFL. Let's not talk about
on my
GFL.
day off. I'm talking about GFL. How dare you?
Great. Let's not talk about GFL again until there's a reason to, unless you're going to read my article that comes out tomorrow. Yeah. You should absolutely do that. But let's spend the next week talking about Paul Hughes and Usman Nurmagomedov, because that fight is sick, and we will talk about it at the end of the year for Fight of the Year. Of that, I am sure. Congratulations, PFL. You guys, that's the best fight you've ever put on, probably the best event or the biggest event you'll have ever done. That's a hell of a start to 2025 for you. Casey, thank you so much for hopping on short notice. I literally could not have done this without you, so it was critical. And thanks to all of you tuned in for this. We got to have a little bit of fun. It is still early yet, especially if you are on the West Coast, on the East Coast. Go have some dinner, maybe settle in for Knucklemania. MMA Fighting's got you covered. And then we're on to Saudi Arabia. Thanks, y'all. Love you.
Bye.